Peace, what's good? After Elemental.
Dominic, aka D Chorus.
And it's Abdul Mubdi.
And what's good? We wanted to have an opportunity to talk about economics, and this is going to be a real interesting conversation. Economics related to us, some myths, some possible strategies and ideas of what happened to us and how could we get to point B or point C. So yeah, we're going to kind of open this up. Let's just touch base on what economics is and how that relates to us. So it could be about issues, it could be about challenges, but what is some of your ideas on the state of economics with us?
Us, or you got pockets of people that have some form of economic strength. Then there's a huge part that is economically challenged, poverty, and I think lack of knowledge just how economics really work.
Right. We have pockets of poverty. You can see that all through the U.S., all through our neighborhoods. We have pockets of economic, but sometimes it's purposeful economic holes or gaps, or even the history of certain communities with redlining and economic sanctions in certain communities, or not specific economic education and resources in certain communities. And for so long, our communities have been neglected when it comes to economic education and economic accessibility to certain resources. And especially from a lot of our history, we have economic, we have specific economic destruction of certain things that we built economically. We're talking about like Black Wall Street. We had an economic base in certain communities, not only just Black Wall Street. We also had Seneca Village that was here in New York City at Central Park.
That's right, Central Park, yeah.
We had different Black communities that were thriving economically, but since white supremacy and white, envy destroyed some of these economic bases, and so we couldn't grow and keep on thriving economically. It was a competition towards other ethnicities' economic base. So that's why it was destroyed.
Well, you're saying some things, and it's kind of making me think about the legacy in the formation of this country. Off camera, I made a statement to y'all that I believe like everything that exists in this country is to destroy the Black man. I stand by that statement. We were never allowed really to compete, and anytime we compete in the realms we chose, something happened to set us back, like Black Wall Street, right? When they did what's the area when they burned down the places, burned down the businesses and all of that? What was it called?
Tulsa, Oklahoma?
Okay,
Yeah.
so like Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
So we were doing really good, right? We had our own stores, we own our own property, we was our customer base, right? And then they came and they literally bombed the place and shot up the place and killed a lot of people and took the possessions and kept them. So this kind of leads me into this direction of this conversation. I read a book by Dr. Claude Anderson called Black Labor, White Wealth.
Right.
I read all 5 of his books and Powernomics. I read all 5 of his books. But these are 2 books that really stood out for me because he wrote these books, like these books are old, like 80s, right?
He's been around for a while.
And I never heard of him in the 80s, right? But during the pandemic, I was watching Dr. Boyce Watkins, whose channel I support monthly, right? I was watching him and he was talking about these books and he said, you need to buy these books. So I bought the books and my whole family read these books. So he broke down the dynamics of Black people economically, where we are and how we are seen in American society, right? I'm going to say it. We are the cash cow for everybody else. Everybody else who attaches themselves to us makes money off of us, but not us, right? I'm going to say in the not-for-profit sector, I said it before on different shows, other organizations who are not black are getting money allegedly to help black people. We are the cash cow for everybody. We'll get up on stage, we'll rap, we'll sing, we'll dance, we'll do whatever. We'll get the stage money, but somebody else making the behind the scenes money. There's always some economic component that is not controlled by us, well, someone else walks away with the lion's share of the money, right? So looking at this concept of a Black Wall Street, Tulsa, Oklahoma, all these places, right? We were doing good, being separate, servicing our own. In sports, you had sports integration. You know, Jackie Robinson got into baseball, and it's a great big thing. Well, when he got into baseball, our black leagues fell.
The Negro Leagues.
Negro Leagues.
Yeah.
They fell. Our black basketball, everything that we had when we integrated, we lost. And we took our money and we gave it to somebody else because we wanted them to accept us.
Yeah, but it's this thing about like white acceptance. But again, with like the integration and the all these other things that we're trying to correct a wrong, they also hurt us economically. So I mean, it was just the consciousness that caused the problem was trying to fix the problem, but caused another problem. Because some of our economic base, we relied it on self. We did for self, and when we relied on self, we understood that we can do certain things and we can have an economic and be self-sustained. And when you take that away and you try to integrate to a bigger, larger society, you kind of break up that economic base and that self-reliance.
Well, I have this concept called follow the money. So when you follow the money, it really actually shows that it should bring the question, I should say, was the goal actually to help us or to help them? Because the end result is it helped them.
Right.
So I can only look at what happened, and I can't look at what somebody's saying, oh, I mean to do good, but bad keeps happening. My opinion, it was designed to help them. And we fell for it thinking we was going to get something that we didn't get ultimately, which was we wanted to be accepted, respected, we wanted to be acknowledged, and we didn't get that, right? But our money went to them.
Right, so that's what I said. Once you have the thing about, they're trying to correct the wrong, but I mean, once we were already, we were already full human beings, but it's just the believing the lie that people has told us for so many long and so many generations that we weren't worthy, or not worthy of love, worthy of being a full-fledged human being. We were 3/4 of a human being. So I mean, again, it was a thing of inhumanity, but from that inhumanity, insanity, the economic definitely affected that. Because it's a perspective of how it is. Because we always, economics based, black people know how to make $1.15, and we've been doing that for so long, and understanding that, it's like, we the trendsetters, the leaders of a lot of things because of these kind of innovations, and people who already have a structure or economic structure, they can build it and expand upon that, and that's what a lot of capitalists have done to our culture. You can see that through hip hop and through the sports things as well. You know what I'm saying? And that's just because they already have that economic structure, economic base. So I could put something behind it and blow it up and make it bigger. And that's what a lot of our economics, how our economics just leaves our community and doesn't kind of recycle it.
We're going to get back to that.
Yeah, well, don't recycle. I think it's one time. Some people is 5, some people is 7.
Right.
We don't support each other.
Right.
That's like a key goal. It goes back to generations of why we don't support each other. That whole trauma, crabs in a barrel mentality. Because we don't even have an economic base here in America. Like we have people that's rich individually, but as a community, we poor as hell. Like so that plays an impact. So at one time you had Stephen Marbury that had the Starberry sneakers. Like people didn't really even want to support that, but they would support Jordans and all these other brands. So that mentality is crippling us, you know, as far as economically, as a whole, as people. Like, if we don't come together and say, hey, we need to support each other, even black businesses really, we don't support really black businesses. Like, you know what I'm saying? We would rather go to these stores that really don't respect us, don't want us to be in there, spend $10, $20, $30,000, but it could be somebody from your neighborhood that's doing the same fashion and it's not getting supported.
Dr. Claude Anderson in his book was talking about the concept of my ice is colder. So you would buy ice from somebody who's not black because somehow you think that ice is colder. It's just a better grade of ice. It's the same exact ice from the same distributor. But because they're selling it to you, there's more credibility, right? And I do want to say this because so this is me personally, Fahim, at the elemental, right? My belief is their goal was not to correct the wrong. My belief is they knew that we were looking for something and they found a way to steal yet again under the guise of helping us. That's my belief.
That comes like I said, to the psychological thing of believing a white lie. A lot of lies have been taught, and you believe the lie, and this is what a lot of the economic base on. I mean, Trump, we just had one of the biggest liars in office, and and people believe the lie, and once you have enough people believing a big lie, and you have this is called propaganda. So when you have a lot of people believing in the propaganda, they buy into it, and they can move a lot of things with this propaganda. And a lot of us don't understand our history. Did you know knowledge of yourself, of what you can produce? Because if you always taught you have never done anything, then you think that you can never do anything. It's back to that quote of Malcolm. So we got to understand that, we have built things that are successful and economical and sustainable. But if you don't know that what our ancestors have done, or with people that look like us have done, then you think you can't do it, or are not exposed to those kind of things. So we have to definitely understand the economics and the reasons behind the psychology behind it as well.
It's almost the Trojan horse, right? So you saying that as far as we didn't benefit? No, we was never going to benefit from it.
Right.
Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's like it's like war. You put your guards down, you allow somebody in, and then they tear you in from inside, right?
Right.
So it's the same thing with gentrification, right? So when Bill Clinton came to Harlem, blacks were super happy, and that was the beginning of gentrification. So.
But it's also it's the same, knowing your value and knowing your worth. It's having to be validated by a white person or a white thing. It's just this thing of psychology of, white is better. The ice is colder. It's the same ice. But this is again the psychological breakdown of not knowing thyself and the self-worth.
I think that's the challenge because we lost that knowledge to a certain extent. Some people have it, the majority don't. We don't know our self-worth. We don't know, because guess what? We've been working for free, right? Our ancestors worked for free. So we don't know the value. We may not know the value of our work. We may be well acquainted with what hard work is, right? But we don't know what we're supposed to walk away with. And then somebody comes up with a nice smile. With a nice
labor.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the book. Black labor, white wealth. So
right.
who is benefiting from our labor, from our knowledge, from our know. I'm just thinking about Lewis Latimer. Lewis Latimer, who created the copper that allows the light to start. But he was working under Edison, right? So he never got the credit of his knowledge and input of it and the economic benefits from it. Right. And people still economically, benefiting from this name to this day. So a lot of these things, that black people have invented, that have done, we always been there, but not receiving the economic spoils from our inventions, our ingenuity, and our input.
I want to say this thing too, and this is just we all have different opinions, right? But we having different conversations. I'm going to say this, with Trump being in office, right? I don't think he was the biggest liar.
Well, no. All the presidents lied.
What I really believe is he's an average liar. Like, I'm just being real with you.
Right.
I think he was willing to put out who he is, right? Where other people hide it. So at least I appreciate the fact that I know who he is.
Right.
Right? Where other people would smile and stab you in your back the second you turn around. This guy is like, yo, this is me, take it or leave it. Boom. Right? So I feel like he exposed a whole lot. Right? Good and bad. He exposed certain things. And now I'm able to look at stuff. I mean, I was always skeptical, but I'm able to look at stuff with a larger level of skepticism now, because now I don't think anybody who held the office of president was totally honest with anybody.
Right.
I just don't.
You gotta understand that human beings are still human beings.
You can't say certain things. That's the whole point. As president, you can't let people in on something. Like, what's something? This is my pet peeve. Who are black people really? What tribes are they from? Somebody knows that, but they're not going to say it.
Right.
Because you can't give hope.
There's no benefit for you.
You can't give hope, because the little boy who's struggling on the streets might change his life if he knew he's not a nigga. Like, some of them believe that.
Right. Well, a lot of us have been niggerized. I mean, because, like I said, if for the first thing for slavery or to control someone, you got to break off all ties to their past and for all their accomplishments. So you have to basically, same thing with the military does. They break somebody down so they can build them back up. They break them down for strip them from all the things that they used to be, so they could build them up of what they want them to be.
Right.
So I know a lot of us, for culturally and as a group, have been broken down. I mean, back in
Socially engineered,
but back when we were brought from the Middle Passage, you weren't allowed to read, you weren't allowed to become educated, you weren't allowed to do certain things, speak the language that you do. Why? Because you wanted to break the communications, break the knowledge base, break the lineage, so you can reconstruct something else. And this is the whole thing with economics. I mean, when the economics, if you have something that works and it's working for you and it's benefiting you and your community, why would you want that to happen if you're trying to control the community and resources, what you're trying to build to?
Well, if you look at our communities when you come economically, it's like the worst healthcare system and our, hospitals as far as crime, like economically, wherever there's poor areas at, that's poor living conditions.
Poor living conditions.
That's, and I don't think that people are looking at that because they're in the midst of the struggle. Right.
They're just trying to survive.
Yeah. But the elective officials from these communities know they're conscious and aware and continue to allow that. So I'm saying, should their black people start to have a new, political, not only perspective, party. Like because we gotta remove ourselves from that mindset, because we are not growing. Like we can't be, some of Dr. Cole said, we was better off 40, 50 years ago than we is now in 2022.
Let me jump in on something, because I want to hone in you before I lose the thought. Politicians, people work in a system. Now, when we had the pandemic, people shut down, people fell back in their rent, right? Because they lost their jobs, right? They have something called the ERAP program, right? ERAP program is supposed to help you pay a portion of your back rent because you lost your job, right? ERAP program ran out of money. They just had a meeting in New York for their budget, $0 for the ERAP program, but $11 million for a hip hop museum, and $800 million for a new football stadium. So, again, the political party don't work for us.
Right. But
we not getting the result because, and it's not just us, a lot of people lost their job who's not black. A lot of people who fell back in the rent who's not black. But we're going to put $800 million for a football stadium. That $800 million could have went to ERAP. But it makes you kind of wonder, the pieces of this puzzle, how does it fit together? To keep people in a state, because you got money for everything else, but you don't have no money to help people get back on their feet who want to work. It's not a welfare thing, right?
Right.
People want to work. People want to do this. Now, I want to say this. We got our neighborhoods, and we always say we poor. Every black neighborhood has stores from everybody else because we spend money. We think poor. We're not poor. We think poor. And that's in Dr. Claude Anderson's books too. We have a poor mentality. We take in money, we make $1 and found 10 ways to spend that dollar. We spent that dollar 10 times over before it hits our hand.
Right.
So we don't retain money.
It's just recycling your money, knowing how to make money off your money. But it also goes back to this thing of, even King was talking about the war on poverty. Poverty doesn't only just affect black people, it affects white people, it affects all types of people. But I mean, but specifically for economic empowerment and to fight poverty. You know, this is supposed to be one of the richest countries in the world, and allegedly this world. But it's just where are the resources being allocated and whose community they're being allocated to. So I mean, we have to be politically educated and hold our politicians or people in our communities accountable of where those resources and monies are being funded to, what programs and who is getting that, because we have our tax dollars or whatever things that are going to someone for certain projects, whether it be roads or be other social services, but is it going to the communities that need these resources and to build an infrastructure that could be self-sustainable and progressive? So I mean, we have to be knowledgeable of what's going on in our communities. Because if you're not knowledgeable of where the dollars, who to speak to, where they're going, what's every cent, whatever dollar is going to this program, to whose type of business, how do we open up a business so we can be involved in the development of it, then it's always going to be going to someone who has those systems in play.
It's kind of hard when people are underwater. Right, like it's I forgot his analogy somebody gave. Like
you underwater,
you hold somebody's breath underwater, and then they just want to breathe.
Right.
They want air. So I don't think people are focused on some of the things that you said because they still underwater.
They're trying to survive.
They underwater and they drowning. I work in the youth development, so I work with all different cultures, and all different cultures are struggling economically. Right, so. It's just that I think ours are more highlighted because, once again, the destruction of us is so important to them. But they're all going through the same thing. Is that they don't have these conversations that we have publicly. Like these conversations can't happen publicly. But I want to make a point, right? You can't really have these conversations either. I want to bring Trump up. Like when they took Trump off of Twitter and all these things, everybody was happy, right? But I was scared to death because, to me, that was the first sign of censorship.
Right.
Where you can't say anything, like, you know what I'm saying, speaking out against a system. Like, you know what I'm saying, how we having this conversation now is almost like barbershop talk or, lobby talk. You can't have these conversations, and people are scared to have these conversations, right? So it's like, whose words? Was it the slave master or the people that watching slavery happen to people? Like this is how I look at things. Like because this is what happening now. People know that the money's not funneling into these communities, right? But they continue to vote for the money not to come here. When you look at the school systems, it's not really producing much. Like kids not even having a decent education anymore.
Right, but again, Trump wasn't a problem. It wasn't the problem, but he was just a symptom because he had 70 million followers. So if you had 70 million followers, you have other people who think this way. So he wasn't the problem. He was just a very window to a very bigger problem that we already have. And this has always been going on behind closed doors, this mind frame, this way of thinking, this ideology. And it's detrimental to, like I said, the development. For me, it's like for our communities, like we sit here together. If I have a wrench, he has a screwdriver, and then he has a hammer. We could put it together and have and fix something, right? So I mean, this is how I approach kind of like economics and development of like businesses and things. We could put our resources together and build something, and make it functional and work, so we can have something for us. But if and a lot of us understand what we were saying. We're underwater. There's a lot of us. Some people are just barely trying to get onto those tools or that bootstraps. And how can you tell somebody to pick themselves up with their bootstraps with a bootless person? This is what King was talking about. This thing about poverty. So I mean, the effects of economic injustices that need to be corrected by institution, but some things we can put on ourselves that we can put together and work on and try to build something. But it's sometimes difficult to bring that to the bigger community, because although we may understand it to have collective economics throughout our communities, to do it functionally and successfully, it takes all of us to do it.
Well, let me say this, because the concept of the King's speech, where he said we are told to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, while America has been subsidizing white farmers from the very beginning, even to the fact that they subsidize them not to grow anything. Right? So you're a white farmer, you got land, and you're being given free money by the government, taxpayer money for people who pay taxes. Right?
Our money.
And our money, because we pay taxes too, right? To basically take it easy. But if you're black, first of all, good luck trying to own a farm if you're black, but you're not going to get any subsidized any money. And I want to say this idea of subsidies, because people talk about the welfare, boom, boom, welfare, all these people on welfare, blah, 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 blah. Majority of people on welfare is not black, right? That's one. Two, America was formed on welfare because immigrants from other countries came here for land they didn't own, and killed the original owners of the land. This is an immigrant conversation you're not going to hear. You're hearing it here. But they killed the indigenous people who possessed the land so the land can be had.
So
that's the subsidy. You could till the land. You don't have to pay for it, but just kill the inhabitants.
But that was the first welfare case. Native Americans gave welfare to the Europeans who basically settled here. So when the Pilgrims came, the first welfare case that actually came to the shores was Native Americans showing them how to grow the corn and how to till the land and survive on this land. So that was a welfare case, because they was trying to build their welfare.
And then they killed them.
How they do that.
And then they killed the natives for thinking that the thanks was they killed them and took the land. So all of this land that everybody's on was. Everybody else was immigrants, right? And they came with the goal in mind to take, right? So that's an economic component that I think that we don't talk about when we talk about the immigrant story, because everybody has an immigrant story. Oh, my parents came here with a nickel. Yeah, but they came here with a nickel and they got land. How they get the land? It was welfare, right? They got tools. They were subsidized. But let me just say this about one of the issues about censorship, and this is a little off topic, but it's related. I was very bothered when they started censoring Trump. I was very bothered because they talk about freedom of speech, freedom of speech, freedom of speech, freedom of speech. Now today, which is coming soon, if I decide to make a video of the negative side effects of the jab that I had, it will never be seen because of censorship. I had a terrible experience with it. But this is what usually happens, Trojan horse thing. They look at an extreme case and they say, we have to censor this person. And they use that to censor everybody else. So that's what I was worried about, because there's certain things that I say that are not accepted by the mass majority, but I've read books and stuff and I can back it up, right? But it won't see the light of day, because you try to put up anything negative about getting the vaccine of the side effects, it's going to be scrubbed off the internet.
And you're going to be banned and
everything else. And that's why it's a problem. But so let's get back to the economics. So black labor, white wealth, and powernomics. So we look at the fact, you mentioned how the money circulates to other communities, right? The way it circulates, so let's break this down. The way it circulates to other communities is because the other communities have businesses in the things we call our community, right? You have stores, corner stores is not owned by us. You have fast food restaurants not owned by. They all in the black community because we spend the money.
Real estate.
So we spend this money. It leaves our hand. It don't circulate 1, 2, 3, 4 times. There's very few black businesses in our neighborhood, but it automatically goes to their community, and they use it for whatever purposes, right? So the money immediately leaves. There's no reinvestment. There's no building of black wealth. Our wealth just leaves as soon as we get our paycheck, right? So we don't get to build. We don't get to start our businesses. We have nothing to leave our children, but we're constantly spending money, right? So savings. Do we save money? Most of us live check to check. That's a reality for most of us because we was told get an education, get a job, learn a trade, get a job, right? So you do that, but nobody talks about what you bring in as opposed to what you put out, right? Savings, your debts compared to your assets, your gross, your net, your future. So this is not a future. This is not a futuristic plan. This plan is make it till the next paycheck. That's the future.
It comes from a survivalist kind of mentality. I mean, a lot of folks have been surviving and not thriving, and we have to. That's a part of the economic miseducation. Is building something so it can grow, having more assets than liabilities, having something that brings in money than better you spending money. So like ownership, home ownership, for so long that it's been a policy. You know, these subprime mortgages that have been put out to a lot of our community that would basically target a lot of black and brown folks that, you know, took people out of home ownership. And then most of the wealth has been built, you know, through home ownership, through ownership of property, and you can pass that on to your lineage. I mean, you know, when you have, you know, black people or your family owning some type of property, and it could be passed on from generation to generation. This is how most of the economic and wealth has been. But for so long, the institutions have been not lending to black families or black communities because of redlining, because of racism, because of all these institutionalized things. And this is why we call for reparations, because it was not only done by these institutions, but our government itself. So, I mean, this is why we have to have not only, it's for institutionalized, because there should be the HR for, I mean, reparations should be for descendants of enslaved people because of these cause and effect. And it's been deliberate for so long, and like I said, it's been, and from that, it's been building up. And this is how economics are being grown, and this is how, you know, wealth is being made. It's through these ownerships and generation wealth.
You gotta say the tagline, Dominic.
Cut the check.
There you go.
Cut the check.
There you go. That's the tagline. That's well, the official line.
When you look at like the house, that's my slogan. Cut the check, man. When you look at just the housing, you know, in the past you can get a house for $12,000, $15,000, $20,000.
But inflation and time,
the average person can't even buy a house now.
Right.
Like realistically, you're not gonna get it. And people don't understand. Even though you bought the house, it's really just an object because you don't own the land, right? So that's why people have to pay property tax when they have a house. So it's like all these, it's still the Trojan horse thing. It's all these underlying things that still can't generate wealth. So when you look at certain things that want to be built in your community, if you have a house, they're going to ask you nicely to, hey, sell or mysteriously burn down. So you look at Harlem, where you had Pan on 135th and Lenox, if anybody know Harlem, right? You know what I'm saying? And the Lenox Terrace, they wanted to build, so it went from Pan mysteriously burned down to now every store that was there within the lot, because they played the long game.
They played the long game.
You know what I'm saying? 5-10 years is not there now.
Knowing the law, know about real estate, eminent domain, the city, state, and how things are acquired. So again, like when talking about the past, black people had land,
yes,
but through laws or policies that they created, has been swindled or taken out of it, so it wasn't be able to grow well. So we understand the cause of the problem of some of the economic woes, but how do we fix it?
Well, like I said, we're gonna have to get our own party or remove the. It's sad to say, remove the people that's in place. That's we consider them
Vote
the
them out.
not
Whatever,
how we
yeah,
got to
yeah.
do it. They need to be removed because they don't have the interest of the people.
Right.
Like
But this is the same-
that's what's really hurting us because there's no way somebody can work 20, 30 years here in
Right.
America, be an American citizen, right? And then you barely, as you get older, you being pushed out of where you live, right? To be pushed into I forgot senior centers and things like that have the worst conditions to treat seniors. Like they're not prepared, but we don't got some of these facilities in our own community.
Right. So economic planning and economic education is what we definitely need. So what is economic education and what is economic
So let's
planning?
talk
So we
about
got to
it.
talk about what is this education that we need, this economic education to benefit our families and our youth and our mid-age and into our elder. What is your exit plan? So
Right.
what is your plan for your economic futures?
So let's talk about that because you mentioned the senior citizens homes. I'm gonna tell people who's listening who doesn't know, you may have parents who's getting up there in age. Let me tell you something about this senior citizens homes, elderly homes, whatever you want to call it.
Retirement.
Assisted living.
Assisted living is a little different, but because I went through this with my dad, so I'm speaking from experience, right? Assisted living, at least the ones I dealt with, Bronxwood, right? I love the place. Fixed rent, right? It's not all of his assets, right? You put them in a senior home, they absorb all your assets. Social Security, retirement, what you have in the bank, property, everything that goes to the senior home. So, for young people who have parents, and I'm not saying it just from an economic standpoint, if you decide to put your parents into one of those facilities, all of their accumulated wealth is gone. You're not going to get it. I'm just going to tell you that right now. You get their life insurance if they have that. And we're going to talk about life insurance. So how do we plan right now, if you have zero savings, how do you plan to have a better future 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line? It's hard to see that when you're drowning and you just need to grasp the air, as you said. We totally get that. But it doesn't change the fact that you still need to do that planning. You still need to understand how money works. I told you a little bit about how to save money, which is you have to have less debts than you have money coming in. That's one. You have to invest. That's two. Invest is not taking your money and putting it in a savings account. A checking account on average pays 0.03% interest. A savings account on average pays 0.06% interest. It's double. So they have this banker's formula called the rule of 72, right? The rule of 72 means take the number 72 and divide it by the interest rate, and that's how long your money's going to take to double. If you took $10,000 and put it into a checking account that pays 0.03% interest, it'll take 2,400 years for the money to double. If you took $10,000 and put it in a savings account at 0.06% interest, it'll take only 1,200 years for your money to double. The bank is going to lend your money out at 29% interest. And you're not going to get any of that. They're going to give you 0.03. So is a bank the first? Is it the best place to put your money? No. And the reason why I'm saying no, I'm a licensed life insurance sales agent in New York, and I'm studying for my investor's license now. I started learning this stuff late in life. All right, late. Debt is a killer of any potential. Debt will kill it. Right? You have people who make $10,000 a month and almost have $10,000 in debt every month. The idea is to keep some of the money to invest. Well, what do you invest in? Stocks, treasury bonds. You could invest in mutual funds, which is a collection of stocks, right? IRA is how you do it, individual retirement account. You have an approved IRA, which is pre-tax, comes out of your money pre-tax, the money grows, but when you start to get the payments, you're going to be taxed.
Right.
You have a Roth IRA, which is post-tax. You put the money in, you get disbursements because you already was taxed on the money, right? You could have both accounts if you want. But if you talk to financial advisors, I did. One time I had a large sum of money, and they was like, well, you need at least $25,000 to invest. And I had it. And I was like, well, do I get to pick the portfolio? They was like, no, our portfolio manager will do it. But you got to pay him $500 a month. Okay, I'm not doing that, right? So I learned that. I work with a company right now, and we'll talk about the company later. I'm not going to say the name, but it's a great company where you need a minimum of $25 a month to invest in a regular IRA approved or a Roth IRA, and you get to pick the portfolio.
That's not bad.
And it's managed. See, compound interest is your friend. Compound interest is I leave money in over time, and it keeps on accruing interest, and it keeps accruing interest. So this is how people make money. Their money is working for them for years, decades. I've been working hard for money. And I'm not against people working hard for money. I did the mechanics jobs, the construction jobs. I did them all right? And at the end of the day, I'm tired, and my money went out to bills. I owed so much money out, debt, credit cards. I still got my student loans paid off. All this stuff, right? But now I'm almost finished paying it off. I'm almost finished paying it off. And it's not breaking the bank to do it. I make sure that I invest a certain amount of money for my future that I'm not going to touch. It's not, I heard somebody, listen, I'm going to start going to some crazy myths. Somebody said they get money orders. $500 in money orders every month. And they purchase the money order and they put it under their mattress. They think that's investing.
No.
The money orders doesn't grow in value, and if you have a fire in your house,
It's
all the
gone.
money's gone.
Yeah, but it's better to get like I-Series bonds or bonds through the U.S. Treasury. You can get those bonds and let them mature, so you don't, and they'll help you with inflation, because the inflation rate of our money, always goes up, and it changes every year. So to try to keep up with inflation is just research some treasury bonds.
Yeah.
And you can go straight to treasury.gov and get those. But it's just a way to be educated economically of how get your money to work for you instead of you always working for money. And this is the same thing about building a business, because when you build a business, or something that's an asset that brings in money for you instead of just spending out money. So what's going to be your ROI, your return on your investment? Mm-hmm. What money are you putting? What are you putting into it, and what are you going to get out of it?
And that's well, college students, I hope y'all taking some notes there, because that's very important, because the average person coming out of college owe $20,000 or plus. But some of the things that y'all spoke about, they should be teaching that early on in college. I mean, in school,
High school,
I say middle school, like the beginning. You know what I'm saying? For by the time you get to high school, you have more of a clarity of what you just learned. So when you get to college, you can make better preparation. You can choose a better degree instead of going for these degrees that the ceiling cap is $70,000 and you then took a $50,000 loan out to make a top salary $70,000. So those are some of the ways that it can start to evolve. It's through education. Like, what I'm saying? It has to be put into school. Because in some of these arenas and universities and higher learning institutions, they're learning that early. Mm-hmm. It's just we're not, and it's funny because even some of the elders don't have this knowledge, right? Parents pass away, and their kids are left money. They don't know what to do with the money. They have no investment ideas, no financial literacy at all, and the money's just squandered. And then later on in life, they wish somebody would have told them that. So even a lot of our people are not knowledgeable just about economics, and what to invest in and how to invest in money.
How to invest it, and that's a lot of our problems, because we have always come into a lot of economic issues, and these economic issues turn to social issues. And because you're feeling depressed, you're feeling desperate, you're feeling all these other things, and it opens up a whole lot of other elements. So if you're financially secure, financially educated, and you get a little more peace of mind, because you're not basically just surviving and going for each day and each day and each day. You can actually plan out some things. So it relieves a lot of our stress. For your mental health, mental well-being, being economically sound and secure is definitely helps with that. So it gives you a little bit more freedom once you know and understand that. So overall, for your mental health and your well-being, you got to be economically sound and be healthy.
Let me just say
this
this.
is also part of your wellness.
I had a conversation. My son is 25. I had a conversation with my son on his birthday. His birthday was last week, Sunday.
Happy belated birthday, King.
All right. We were talking about investment, and I said to him, if you took $10,000 right now, 25 years old, and you invested it in an IRA and didn't put no more money in, one-time investment of $10,000 at 9% interest in 30 years is going to be $320,000 from that 10,000. People don't think, right? Retirement age, you're going to keep something in retirement, that same money could be $2.5 million.
Right.
That one-time investment that you left in for 40 years.
Yeah. But this goes back into the psychological. If you have, people, especially reaching a certain age point, don't see themselves in the future. So this goes back into the trauma and economics. So when we were growing up, it was like, I think Kanye had a song, it wasn't supposed to make it past 25. So if you have a short life expectancy, this goes back into the mental health and trauma of our community. Mm-hmm. We don't see ourselves living to be a certain age or see ourselves in the future. So we have to definitely plan, and this is part of the trauma that's going along with our community. But we have to understand the economic impacts of it as well, because if you don't see yourself going to be retirement, even reaching that stage point, you don't prepare for it and save for it.
It's funny you said that. A lot of millennials, that terminology, Drake had the YOLO, you only live once. It's almost like indoctrination. Like now that a lot of millennials are 30, they somewhat depressed, right? Because they thought they never seen themselves at that age. You know what I'm saying? So now they have these student loans and the responsibility of being an adult, and that's impactful. Like, you know what I'm saying? So that mentality is what's really killing us. In a sense, is that mentality. Is you hit a key on the head, is a lot of people don't think they're gonna get to that age. And then when they get there, it's like, damn, what do I do now? It's almost too late. Yeah. Not in reality it's too late, but the uphill battle's a little more harder.
Oh yeah.
Well, there's a quote that Malcolm always said: "The future belongs to those who prepare for it." So I think it's for us, for our community, just basically to each one teach one, to reach others. So we once we have the information, to share it and knowledge. And this is the whole thing about community. We must have stronger communities so we can have these conversations and this discourse, so we can basically school people on economic freedom or economic education, so you could be prepared for it. Not only just the younger generation, but also the older generation. Because some of our parents and people weren't taught this. They were just surviving. And they were surviving from day to day. They were fighting just to be recognized as human beings. So, that problem and that situation, like I said, it does have an effect on from the past to the in the future, has effect on the present. So this legacy of all these things that we have been through has an effect on our economic condition and what we're going through right now.
I want to talk about.
This is just from
you
my
said,
viewpoint.
No. This is great viewpoint.
This is from my lens.
Right. One of the things that we mentioned was inheritance is one way of getting
Inheritance, right.
of having wealth and business ownership, right? So I'm a business owner. I've been a business owner since I was 17, right? My mentors, in high school, they taught me. Wally, I'm gonna say his name, Wally. He taught me a lot about electronics and all that stuff. I learned computers, and I came out and he said, the best job to have is the one you create. And he gave me my first job. So I went and opened up a computer company called FAR Technologies at 17, right? And I started getting the contracts to connect the computers, set them up in the, they call them EOC centers, government computer centers. Back, this was early, like in the 90s, like before, like early 80s, late 80s rather. I was getting these contracts, right? And I was making money. And I saw the freedom that it came with that. So business ownership. People don't have the mind state, or they may not have the know-how to say, I'm gonna open up a business. So here's the first thing I say. What do you love? What do you love doing? Turn it into a business. I loved computers. I was a gamer, right? I was a gamer. I hacked somewhat, had some fun. I was underage, so I'm gonna say I hacked. But I was a gamer,
Allegedly.
programmer, right? And all of that. So I loved that. So I was like, okay, I went from the coding side to the hardware side. I loved it even more.
Right.
So I made it into a business, right? And when I made it into a business, the owner takes the risk. The owner gets the big reward, right? At the end, I got a lot of big rewards, right? And then I started, started getting older and was like, well, I want to get married. This work wasn't 100% stable. So I'd say, okay, I need a stable job because I didn't have health care. Nobody talked to me about that. Right. So, okay, I want to get married. I need to have health care. I need to get a regular job. Took on a janitor job, became a boiler mechanic from the janitor job, all this stuff. Got hurt. And I started to realize nobody's talking about health care. Nobody's talking about retirement. Nobody's talking about investments, right? And even up to the point where I'm now, where I finally, okay, I got licensed, nobody talked about life insurance. Right. And the thing that made it stick out to me, the life insurance story, is I lost my mother first. She only had a $4,000 policy. My father didn't have a policy 2 years later. I had a nephew, he was a preemie, but nobody takes a policy out on a baby. He died preemie, right? Then 2 months after he died, my sister died, which was his grandmother. She didn't have a policy, right? Then in 2018, my other sister died, right? She had a policy. Then in 2020, my brother died. He didn't have a policy from COVID related. Right. So it tapped our pockets every time somebody died. Yeah. Like hard. We didn't have no money, especially during the pandemic. We didn't have no money, and I love my brother to death. But I was like, damn, why nobody have a life insurance? So
this is economic planning. This is the thing about planning.
But it's cost related.
Cost related, right?
So people, this is what nobody's having a real conversation about life insurance. Life insurance is actually not called life insurance. I learned this. It's called income security. It's supposed to guarantee the money you're making in case you die for a certain amount of years. That's the purpose of it. Right. But when they sell it to us, they never have that conversation. They say $50,000, whole life, or universal life. You should not be getting whole life and universal life policies. Right. That's the most expensive policy they can sell you. You should be getting term life. Susie Orman said it, which I follow her, right? And she don't work for the company I work for, but it's dead on. For the amount of money that you pay for a whole life policy or a universal life policy, you could get triple the money coverage for a term life policy. So if you're paying $50,000 and you're paying $67 a month, that same $67,000 will get you a minimum of $150,000 term life for 20, 25, or 30 years. So some people's like, oh, and I want it for the rest of my life. No, you don't. This is what I learned too. When people get life insurance does not benefit the person who takes out the policy. If it's the same person who who's being insured.
Just remember that, y'all.
It does not benefit you. It kicks in when you die. And it creates an instant estate when you die. So if you have $0 to leave to your family, your life insurance policy upon your death, and there's stipulations, but upon your death, will create X amount of dollars, $150,000. That's supposed to be money that should last your family close to 5 years. The income you was bringing in. The second thing is, people with dependents need more coverage than people without dependents, right? So it creates this instant estate when you pass, right? Tax-free. So I know some people are going to be like, oh, we're going to put the money in a trust fund. You just gave away money for somebody to manage a trust because the life insurance payment is tax-free. You don't need a trust to do it. I'm licensed, so I could say this to you. You don't need a trust to take the proceeds from a life insurance policy. But again, the purpose is for when you die. Investments are for while you're alive. Opposite things. Life insurance, income protection is not an investment. It's not. And the purpose of term, as opposed to paying for your whole life, it's a de-incentivizer for whole life. I'm going to tell you what I mean. People get life insurance and they feel like, oh, I don't got to work hard to build up an estate because when I die, my family's going to get this.
Right.
So you get kind of lazy and you don't work hard to become wealthy.
Right.
The point is, life insurance is you have it until you don't need it. You're not supposed to need it your whole life.
But this also goes to the thing about estate planning. Like estate planning, meaning plan your future, planning to be in the future. So you also want to build wealth so you can keep it and so you can build generational wealth. That means ownership, having assets, things that appreciate in value instead of decrease in value. So like you, I also built a business. You know, when I was about 16, 15, I had like right choice. I was an artist and I was a self-screen and stuff like that. But talking about insurance and talking about building something and so you can retain it and keep it going. So, you know, when building a business and knowing the things about being an entrepreneur, the work that you have to put into it, but also retaining it and maintaining it so you can prosper from it and it keeps on going. That's something that we also have to focus on, of building up your company so it can be functional and sustainable. So
Key person insurance is another thing people don't talk about. It's called key person insurance. If the person is critical to your business, you could take out a policy on them. That's your insurable interest because you need them. And if something happens to them, you could actually afford to pay to train somebody else to do that work. It's called key person insurance.
Well, it's funny you said, well, companies that we work for now, certain organizations have life insurance out on us.
Right.
So it's all a business.
It's a business, and the thing is, you want to make sure that the business could continue, right? They have key person insurance. Also, is if you have business owners and one of the partners die, the insurance will buy out their shares, and the other parties will be able to absorb those shares. So all of this exists, right? This is how companies stay running. This is how companies continue going. And again, this is how some people build wealth when they don't have any. Right? But historically, we, at a point, was discriminated against with that. So I told you, my mother had whole life a $4,000 policy. How are you paying for your whole life for $4,000? Like you could have just saved $4,000. So you're paying somebody. Life insurance is an expense. It's not an asset, because people say, oh, I could get whole life or I could get universal life and I could just keep putting money in my account past the premium and I could just stash money. Yeah, but here's what happens with that. Or I could borrow, I could take out money from the account even if I don't do that. Here's the problem. They tell you that in the beginning, yes, and you can even take money out your account from the cash value. They're not telling you that the cash value is their account. They invested your money. They are paying you a percentage of interest, but they're getting a higher percentage, and then they make this cash account available to you for you to borrow with no credit check, because it happened to me, so I know I'm speaking from experience.
Right.
And then when you borrow it, they say, oh, by the way, you got to pay this back with interest. Here's the interest rate.
Right. But
And now you're paying interest on money that you thought was yours.
But this goes back to another. This is back to another question and another thing about credit, and knowing your credit and who gives you credit, and where does the credit thing come from in the first place. So I mean, knowing the economic systems that people have been placed into it, and how it basically came about in the first place. So for me, being a spiritual person, I first thank God gives you credit for first. But I mean, what is the economic base? What is it coming from? Where is it coming from? Where do we first? How our notes was the U.S. note was basically supposed to be backed by some type of gold or silver. So when you're coming from bills or notes, they're supposed to be backed by its weight in gold or in silver. So, what is this investment? So if you have an investment, the things that don't appreciate, like buying actually gold and silver and having that a decrease in value and having assets that increase in value or never diminish in value, those are the things that you want and to have to pass on to your family.
So how did the credit come about then?
Again, exactly. That goes into another question. That's like, where did it come from? Who started this?
Yeah, who started that system?
Yeah, so there's a lot of research with the feds and the mint and all the economic systems have been in place upon. So this goes into a lot of topics. I have some research, but not all the knowledge on it.
I have a lot of knowledge on it. I can tell you some stuff. So this is a great conversation. When we came up with this idea of Federal Reserve notes, money, right? People used to pay with gold and silver. And it was heavy to carry around. So some people decided, hey, we're going to open up a bank. And you deposit your gold and silver, and we'll give you these notes backed by how much gold and silver you have in our system. They created money, right? And the money, like you said, was backed by gold and silver, redeemable by a certain amount of gold and silver. But here's what the bankers did. The bankers said, hey, everybody's putting their money in here, right? They put in their gold and silver. So what they started to do was give out more notes than they had gold and silver on hand. So they were making a whole lot of money, right? And of course they're charging fees, right? So that's the concept of money. So I have in one of my songs, I say backed by faith, but ain't worth the paper they use to print on modified behavior. I'm talking about money. Right. So if people break down my songs, they'll be like, yo, he's talking about money. Yeah, the money is backed by faith. And now it's credits.
It's credits, but now this goes into this thing of credit and cryptocurrency and digital money. So I mean, this is what we're in right now.
Right.
How do we because for money, how we used to do it back in the day before pre-America, the West. We had carousels, we had other things of trade and understanding, even bartering with Native Americans, everything like that, of forms of doing to other types of business. So it's just what we put value on and what do we hold valuable, and how do we use it as exchange. So this is the thing about wealth and that building wealth and what do you think wealth is? So wealth is not always just monetary, but what do you value as well? So, but we want to put it as we want to put the check. So how we could use this in the real world, and how we could use how we could use it to buy bread and butter. So, and this thing about bread and butter, and what that concept is about bread and butter. But we can.
So credit.
Yeah.
Right? So he's like, where did credit come from? Okay, so now the system is a proven system because they like, hey, people's bringing us their actual assets that's valued, gold and silver. And it's valued because we valued gold and silver. Like to some people, it could have been, hey, this is just a shiny rock, right? Whatever. Yeah. But we valued it. So now people want this, it has value. They deposit it, we're going to give them these notes, right? They come up with this banking system with these notes, and then they took the backing of the precious metals from behind it, right? And now it's just printed on paper, right? Allegedly controlled by the Federal Reserve, which is a group of private banks.
Allegedly.
Federal Reserve is a group of private banks, right? So that's another thing. So this private bank said, hey, we're going to print this money. We're going to boom, 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 boom. So credit. Oh, well, you don't have to carry around all these reserve notes. It's a switch out now. You don't have to carry around all these reserve notes. We will lend you at an interest rate money that you don't necessarily have. But because you have a history of borrowing and paying it back on time, we're going to give you a credit rating. And we're going to value your buying and paying back as you being credit worthy. You deserve the credit. So we're going to give it to you. But in our neighborhoods, the stuff that we needed credit for is not the things that was approved to build credit. Right? So again, it's this thing. What do? They do this, they do that, they do that. That doesn't count. Only what this group does counts. Right? And I realize it. And I'm going to say it. I don't feel bad about it. A lot of money has gone through my hands throughout the many decades. And I've had a low credit rate. Now I understand why. Until I started leasing equipment and leasing stuff, shot my credit rating up. So my thing was...
Well, the credit rating is just the ability of paying back money.
So that means if you go to the store and you bought the $600 pair of sneakers with cash, you're not building your credit.
Right.
But if I put the $600 in sneakers, $600 pair of sneakers on my credit card and paid it back in 25 days and I paid no interest, that built my credit.
Yep.
$25 a month could get you investing for your future. And $25, what is $25? $25 is one Grubhub meal.
Or
one
if you got weed smokers, an eighth, a bottle,
Like one day out the month, don't do that. One day I'm talking about.
Right.
$25 a month.
Or if you're like a club head, going to a club, you spending $50, $100 just to get in, just one time out of the month, you save, $25. That's less than your phone bill, actually.
And if you look at the new J's, don't buy no J's. That's like, 8 months of investing,
Just as saying, sneakers. If you fail to plan, you have planned to fail.
Right. People don't, this is what Nas said. He said people don't plan to fail, they just fail to plan.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you definitely plan your future, plan your savings, and invest in yourself.
So this conversation about, so I'm talking about, the IRAs because that's the line I'm going. I've had my run with stocks. I used to pick stocks and do all that stuff and made some money, and some money, I'll tell you the story about that later at Economics, which is crazy, where I was supposed to be in like $28 million, and then they froze the stocks that I had and for market correction, and the stocks is worth 1 penny.
For margin calls.
So they just say market correction. Mm-hmm. So that was what it was. They saw that the stock was raising kind of quick, and it went from like 28 million to like 1 penny, right? I couldn't sell it. So when I say they froze the stock, that means you can't sell your shares, right? So that happened to me. I also invested in companies like PayPal when Elon Musk started it. So I'm good at picking stock. I know how to pick stock, but I'm not the guy to be like chasing it, like looking at it every day. Because I got businesses. Like I didn't show you the layout of this room, but I own all this gear, right? I own $100,000 in film and audio gear. Like I own it, it's mine. So with a business, I look at it from the perspective of nothing's really stopping me in the sense of creating product or whatever. Nothing. I own everything except a location.
Well,
so
that goes into real estate.
Let me just say this right quick. Thanks for MMCC and PS 185 for letting me use this space to do this podcast and have this program. This is actually a podcast program. People could learn how to do podcasts here in this program. So we're going to put a link in the description below, and you'll be able to
for free.
Yes, for free. So I'll shoot your
Let's
pilot.
Keep that in mind.
I'll shoot your pilot for free. Pilot, 30 minutes. We can talk about that, but for free. You'll learn. You could be part of the crew. You learn about cameras. You learn about lighting. You learn about sound. I'm an audio engineer as well. And you can learn this, and then, we could talk about if you need me to shoot something for you. That's going to be what the deal is. So, yeah, but let's get back to the economics.
Economics, yeah. So being economic educated, economically sound, being economically taking care of your business before your business takes care of you. That's what we're basically going to talk about. And this is dealing with your economics, your well-being, your spiritual, your mental, and your whole overall well-being. But you definitely got to focus on your economic well-being. And being economically educated, economically sound, so you know how to plan your future.
Yep.
It is up to the elders to economically empower the young people so they can have this knowledge and pass it on, and we can build generational wealth.
So I believe like one of the things, I'm older, and there's a lot of young people coming up, and I've said this in many of my programs. I don't think we did them right. I don't think we did the younger generation right. So I'm in my do the work phase, and my do the work phase means empowering young people, creating opportunities for young people, helping them along the line, helping them develop because somebody did it for me.
Most
Right?
definitely.
So I'm giving back. I'm in that phase giving back. And I want to empower young people because they don't, you know what? I got all this gear. They don't have the gear. Why can't we get something done? You understand? That's the way I see it. We got to be able to get something done. So we looking for people who got ideas of shooting films, ideas of shooting short stories, ideas of shooting whatever. If you got that right now, this is the crew right here. Like we building our crew. We could always use more members of the crew. I can show you how to handle the camera. I'm about to get one of those Steadicam with the robot arm thing, majiggy. I'm about to pick one of those up. I have other Steadicam gear. I have light gear. I have sound gear. I have everything.
Well,
so
yeah,
you could learn this process and become part of the crew. And in the same process, we can help you do your project.
and through our lens, we can build an economic base and economic community so we can all prosper.
Black content.
And black filmmakers,
Black
creators.
content. We need to have ownership of films. We need to have ownership of our music. We need to have ownership of our pictures. We need to have ownership of our representation. We need to have our own station. We need to have our own, we need to build these things, but like it's a conversation, but we need to do it.
Right.
So there's people in pockets who have the technical ability or the gear. There's also people in pockets who have the money.
Right.
So we need to be having conversations with all of these people, right? You have the ideas, you have the people who can execute, you have the money. We need to have all these conversations. These young people today, I believe, is very smart. They're entrepreneurs, right? Well, how do we bring you to that next level?
Right.
How do we get you? So the business ownership is one of the components we mentioned.
Right.
It's one of the most important components because you can't. What I learned, my father was an elevator escalator mechanic for transit. When he passed away, nobody had a job for me in transit for elevator escalator. It didn't transfer to me.
Yeah, you can't.
You can't give them your job.
No.
Guess what else you can't give them?
Unless
Your
you-
degrees.
Can't get them that degree.
Unless you build the job and you own the
There
company.
you go. So you own
Once you, that's why we have to build our economic base. We
Key.
have to build something.
Key.
And let's own it together. Or
Key.
let's build it. So this is what we talk about black economics.
And we got to be able to work together. I think that's very essential, man. Like, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes we can't agree on a sandwich, like as black people. We have to come together and be able to work with each other and not try to one-up the next person. Like, you know what I'm saying? My thing is, if we all in this race together, if I don't make it, at least somebody else will and they can bring me along. That's the mentality that we got to start having instead of trying to one-up the next person and be, I'm better than this person or this is better than that. Nah, we got to come together collectively because it's not just about us anymore.
Right.
Like, once you reach a certain age, it's not about you anymore.
Right.
You got to give back. It's about the
But
next
also,
generation.
Always have it clear, but always have have some clarity, have transparency, so everything is out in the open, so we don't cause any divisions or any hang-ups. So if you have a quarrel, it should be able to be resolved. That's why we want to also talk about, the mental health and just spiritual health, but just your right intention, so you can grow something that's solid and progressive.
Yeah, I think that having an idea of we all come from like some shared experience but different experiences, right? And we all agree to even if we gotta agree to disagree, we gotta agree that this is what we're doing. Right? We gotta do that. We may not see everything the same way, but we have enough respect to say, okay, everybody's opinion is respected, everybody's perspective is respected,
Everybody's
and it builds this. Because the
Right.
concept is this: if we all three in a boat and there's a hole in the boat, and all three of us need to find a way to patch a hole or bail the water out, and when one person says they're not, they're both gonna sink.
Right.
It's bottom line.
We got here in different ships, but we all in the same boat.
So we all in the same boat. So that's the whole concept of being able to get together. And I think black men need to push this more amongst black men, because as I'm saying, like this, and I'm not a hater. I'm not a hater, but there's a ton of programs for black women right now. I can't find a single program for a black man.
Or a support group. So that's important that we don't support one another.
That supports my idea
Well,
that we the target.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because it's nothing. And we the minority. We 48% of the black population. We the minority. We don't have no minority status.
Right.
Nothing.
Right.
So we got to do it.
Right.
It's up to us. Right? And I'm going to just close on this. My comment is we got to be truthful and honest with each other.
Right.
Because we got scars from that. Right? This is why we don't talk to each other. This is why we feel like this dude gonna try to do this, gonna get me, or whatever the case may be. We gotta be truthful and honest, right? So that means have a level of integrity when you're dealing with somebody. Don't be out there trying to rip people off. I know the young community, that's a problem with a lot of us in hip hop. A lot of the old heads ripped off the young heads. Ripped off the up and coming.
Again,
so they don't want to hear nothing from us.
That comes from a survival mentality. You know, it's just you give me, you grabbing, but not realizing that you're tearing down other people while you're trying to get up.
So the thing with me is, yes, that's 100% accurate. Okay, we got to fix it. We got to change it. Let's be honest, right? Just do the actions, right?
We got to also hold people accountable. People got to be held accountable. That's one thing. Like, we are not holding our brothers accountable, like, at all. Like, you know what I'm saying? So and we gotta have some type of humility with us. Like, we don't have that. We don't have no humbleness with us. Like, you know what I'm saying? So in order to really strive and move forward, these things gotta come organically. It's not something that, you know, it gotta organically grow, because it's tainted. Our culture is tainted. Our people is tainted. Like, so it gotta organically. So this what we doing right here is organically.
Right.
Like, we all met each other through different variations of journeys in our life, and collectively, this is what we're doing to reach out and help people.
Right.
So, you know, we hoping that y'all can listen to what we're saying and at least be sparked a little bit. How my man Tupac said, just spark the fire.
It goes back into the old, you know, tradition of hip hop when it started. Each one teach one. Maybe we will reach one. So I mean, we got to get back into the basics. The basics of the culture was to uplift ourselves. So this is what we're doing. We're trying to push forward the culture and stop letting culture vultures trying to take it from us, and implement what we're trying to do to build up each other.
All right. So let's say peace. FD Elemental out.
Peace.
And this is through our lens.